Hey, Al Scott here. If you're like me, you need coffee. Lots of it. And you probably prefer it tastes good, too. Well, let me tell you about Darren's Coffee Company at darrenscoffee.com. Darren Marion is a natural entrepreneur who decided to leave his corporate job and strike out on his own, making great coffee. And Darren's Coffee is now delivering right to your door. Darren gets his beans direct from farmers around the world. All specialty, premium grade with no filler. Hey, the man just wants everyone to have a chance to taste this great coffee. darrenscoffee.com. Use promo code Scott and you get free shipping. darrenscoffee.com. All right, you guys, welcome back. I'm Scott Horton. It's my show, The Scott Horton Show. Our first guest today is Greg Grandin. He is the author of Empire's Workshop, Latin America, the United States, and the Rise of the New Imperialism, which has been sitting on my pile forever, and I curse myself for not having read yet because, wow, what an interesting topic for a book. But then check out this new one. Kissinger's Shadow, brand new out. Kissinger's Shadow, the long reach of America's most controversial statesman. And so, how do you like that? He's got a piece at TomDispatch.com, which of course ran under Tom Englehart's name at antiwar.com as well. Henry of Arabia. Welcome back to the show, Greg. It's been way too many years since we've spoken. How are you?
I know. Good. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you joining us today. And wow, what a great article. Of course, people would have to read volumes and volumes to catch up on all of the crimes of Henry Kissinger. So let's focus on this Tom Dispatch article here, and the way you narrow down the focus to the Persian Gulf and Henry Kissinger's legacy as Secretary of State and National Security Advisor and advisor to presidents ever since the 1960s and all the way through here, and just what a mess Kissinger himself has gotten us into. It's a really fun read, actually, the way you trace it all back. So the floor is yours, sir. Where would you like to begin?
Well, I would like to begin with the infrastructure of crisis and catastrophe that he put into place. I mean, some of Kissinger's well-known policies in the Middle East are well-known. His betrayal of the Kurds in 1975, serving them up to Saddam Hussein in Iraq once they outlived their usefulness in playing off Iran versus Iraq, and his shuttle diplomacy in winding down the 1973 Arab-Israeli war is fairly well known. But more broadly, just the way that he did a number of things. One is that he built up Iran and Saudi Arabia at the same time, establishing the framework of massive arms transfers and sales. He gave the Shah pretty much what no other nation in the world had at that time, and that was the ability to buy whatever he wanted from the U.S. military. And, of course, using rising petrodollars, rising the profits from rising oil prices to pay for all of this. And that put in the support for the secret police of Iraq and put, in many ways, Iran on the road to radicalization and revolution. And then the same thing with Saudi Arabia. He worked out the same set of arrangements with Saudi Arabia. So in some ways, this Sunni-Shia conflict, which is engulfing the Gulf and which Kissinger himself warns about as the reason why the U.S. should reject Obama's Iran deal, was put into place by Kissinger. And that's just the least of it. He also built up Pakistan's ISI and encouraged them to go. When people talk about blowback and talk about CIA support for the jihadis and political Islam, they tend to focus on the 1980s, rightly so, and the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan and the CIA's move to destabilize that occupation. But Kissinger in many ways put that structure into place by reestablishing diplomatic relations with Pakistan after the genocide in Bangladesh in 1971, and then supporting ISI, and then encouraging Afghanistan to move into Afghanistan, to put Afghanistan into play. This is well before the constant crisis and conflict and turmoil and radicalization that we now associate with the region. So I think Kissinger has a lot to answer for.
Yeah, well, and even then, on the Bangladesh thing, he was kind of in on that with them in the first place, too, right?
Yeah, he wanted to keep Pakistan as a correspondent between China and Washington, and it had to do with him and Nixon wanting to normalize relations with China, and Pakistan played a role in facilitating that as an intermediary, because Pakistan was an ally of China, and Pakistan, Bangladesh, which at the time was East Pakistan, separated by India. There was a sense it was going to go left. That there were these secular modernists that were socialist and social democratic and Marxist, and Kissinger. And I mean, there's the transcripts. Gary Bass wrote about this in the Blood Telegram in gruesome detail. But Kissinger and Nixon expedited that genocide.
All right, so there's so much there. Let's go back to the beginning. You say that Kissinger ramped up the arms sales to the Shah to such a degree, but the Shah had been put back in power, of course, by the Eisenhower administration and had been kept there by Kennedy and Johnson. So to what degree did they really increase it? What was the real shift between the Johnson and the Nixon years when it came to America's alliance with the Shah?
Oh, there was a qualitative difference under Kissinger in '72 with the Shah. I start off the piece with that the only person that Kissinger flattered more was more than Nixon was the Shah of Iran. But it was in '72 that and the Shah had pretensions to be a regional leader. He wanted Iran to be treated as equals with other Cold War allies, including West Germany and Great Britain. And Kissinger accommodated, or at least pumped up those airs and those pretensions, and backed it up with arms sales. I mean, the numbers are staggering. I don't have the piece in front of me. Let me see if I can find it. But the numbers are just hard to grasp. By 1975, 1976, Iran and Saudi Arabia were the recipients of some of the largest amounts of U.S. Military arms sales. The Shah, Kissinger, as James Schlesinger, was Secretary of Defense, said Kissinger wanted to turn the Shah into the guardian of the Gulf, and he did. By 1977, the Shah had the largest navy in the Persian Gulf, he had the largest air force in Western Asia, he had the fifth largest army in the whole world, thousands of tanks, hundreds of helicopters, hundreds of long-range artillery pieces, and missiles, and F-4 fighters and F-5 fighters. In 1978, the Shah brought $12 billion worth of equipment. So there's a political economy here too. What the rise of energy costs and the creation of petrodollars, and then the use of those petrodollars to recycle them back into the military-industrial complex. And this is the beginning of the post-Vietnam wind-down. So they had to, where the military budget was being lowered in the United States. So in some ways, the petrodollars from Iran and Saudi Arabia floated the military. There's a great book, The Oil Kings, by Cooper. I can't remember his first name. But he interviewed Schlesinger, and Schlesinger admitted that basically Iran funded research and development, for military equipment through the 1970s, just by how much money they were pouring into the defense industry.
And then, so what's a SAVAK?
Oh, SAVAK is SAVAK. Is the infamous Iranian secret police, the death squads, the intelligence structure of Iran that supported the Shah and was bloody and repressive, and the horror stories of the torture that SAVAK presided over, in particularly as protests against the Shah built up steam. And somebody like George Ball, who was a career diplomat, called Kissinger's support for the Shah an act of folly, that basically it just shut down any possible internal evolution and led to the religious radicalization.
All right, well, so that's a very important point right there. The blowback, the revolution, the blowback, not just from the Shah being the Shah, but the escalation of American support for him and his death squads and all that. Leading to the revolution. Interesting stuff. Hang tight, everybody. We'll be right back with Greg Grandin, author of Kissinger's Shadow, right after this. Hey, Scott Horton here for MPV Engineering. This isn't for all of you, but for high-end contractors specializing in industrial construction and end users who own and operate industrial equipment. MPV offers licensed professional consulting on chemical and mechanical engineering for your projects. Tanks, pressure vessels, piping, heat exchangers, HVAC equipment, chemical reactors for oil companies or manufacturing facilities, as well as project management support and troubleshooting for those implementing designs. MPV will get your industrial project up and running. Head over to mpvengineering.com. Hey, Scott here. On average, how much do you think these interviews are worth to you? Of course, I've never charged for my archives in a dozen years of doing this, and I'm not about to start. But at patreon.com/Scott Horton Show, you can name your own price to help support and make sure there's still new interviews to give away. So what do you think? 2 bits? $1.50? There are usually about 80 interviews per month, I guess, so take that into account. You can also cap the amount you'd be willing to spend in case things get out of hand around here. That's patreon.com/Scott Horton Show. And thanks, y'all. All right, you guys, welcome back. Now, I know it's fun to trace America's horrible interventions back to Woodrow Wilson or McKinley or Lincoln even, Washington, wherever you want. Each intervention causes the crisis that becomes the excuse for the next intervention. And so Grandin, author of the brand new book, Kissinger's Shadow, is filling in some details on the excuses for our current interventions and their roots in Henry Kissinger's policies in the 1970s, ramping up support for the Shah militarily and for his internal secret police forces, whose resultant clampdown helped lead to the revolution of 1979. And then, as you point out in here, and I had always read it was Brzezinski at the behest of David Rockefeller, but apparently it was Kissinger at the behest of Nelson Rockefeller, I guess. You know, they work for different Rockefellers, who had Jimmy Carter, who pressured Jimmy Carter. You have to let the Shah into America. And maybe you can fill us in on this. Someone was just asking me about this the other day on the Twitter there, about CIA and State Department support for the Ayatollah revolution in 79, because they knew the Ayatollah, because he'd helped overthrow Mossadegh and install the Shah back in 53. And they told the French, go ahead and let him go home from Paris. And because they figured everything would be all right, just like the Israelis kept their relationship with the Iranians after the revolution. They thought it would be okay, but then Kissinger and/or Brzezinski, at the behest of the Rockefellers, pressured Carter to let the Shah into the United States for asylum. You say in your article, I always thought it was just for medical treatment, but either way. And then that was what led to the riot and the seizing of the embassy hostages and the real crisis of the revolution.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't have specific information about the CIA. It would make sense that if once the revolution was getting underway, that they might want to support the Ayatollahs as a way to moderate what they thought would be too leftist or, secular nationalist factions, and they thought maybe they could play one off the other, and obviously they weren't able to do that. Yes, Kissinger advocated and lobbied for the Shah to be let in, and that led to further radicalization. I mean, this is not unlike what happened in Venezuela in 1959 after the dictatorship fell and the U.S. took in the dictator who was a torturer and repressor, and that led to, one of the reasons why the crowds besieged Nixon as vice president during his campaign. So you see those patterns over and over again, and as you put it so nicely at the beginning of this segment, right, every intervention creates the conditions and justifications for the next interventions, and that's one of the things I was trying to get in at this book about Kissinger. Not that I think that I don't think that you could expunge Kissinger from U.S. history and you would have a virtuous republic. I think that U.S. interventionism is structural and goes beyond the evilness of any one man. But Kissinger does bear quite a bit of responsibility, but he's also illuminating. During his last book tour last year, when he was asked about Cambodia and Chile, overthrowing Chile in 73 and bombing Cambodia in 69 to 73, he was largely left off the hook by reporters, but one or two did ask him a few critical questions. You know what he said? He pointed to Obama and he said, well, how is it different than Obama's drone program, Cambodia? How is Chile different from what we did in Libya? And, perversely, he's not wrong. And those justifications in 69, 70, 71, 72, 73 were so far out of the mainstream, Kissinger couldn't make them in public. But now the idea that we have the right to attack a sovereign country to root out the safe havens or sanctuaries of enemies underwrites the authorization for the use of military force. It underwrites the drone program. It underwrites the global counterinsurgency. But what's also interesting about that Kissinger's crazy defense is it illustrates the 40-year history. Kissinger is invoking today's endless wars and regime change to justify what he did 40 years ago. But what he did 40 years ago, in some ways, created the context and momentum for today's endless wars. So that perfect circle of U.S. militarism is right there in Kissinger's justification and militarism.
Yeah, it's funny. You read in the Glaspie memo, and Saddam Hussein is explaining on the eve of his invasion of Kuwait that, well, hey, man, I thought we had a deal, and I borrowed all this money from the Kuwaitis and the Saudis to fight this war basically for them, to contain the Iranian Revolution this whole time. And now they've got the price of oil so low, including overproducing from shared wells on the border. They got the price so low, I can't possibly pay them back the money that I owe them, which is ruining the whole economy here in Iraq as well. We can't reinvest nothing. We gave up everything. And so he's just complaining about the consequences from the last war when, oops, we have a revolution in Iran. Now we got to do something against it. And then that reminds me of the WikiLeaks. Thank you, Chelsea Manning, where the Saudi king is reported to have said, I don't understand it. It was always you, me, and Saddam against Iran. But now you've given Iraq to Iran on a golden platter, not even just a silver one. And so, but anyway, it's just back and forth with all these very same things and the consequences of one. Saddam Hussein then invades Kuwait, and they go, oh, no, you can't do that. That becomes the excuse for the Americans to occupy the Arabian Peninsula, wage the first Gulf War, and then the blockade and the no-fly zones, which, of course, led to the conditions of the terrorist war against us and the excuse-making after 9/11 and on and on.
And Kissinger supported all of that. Kissinger, going back and looking at what Kissinger said during the first Gulf War was interesting. Gene Kirkpatrick, there was a bunch of Cold War conservatives that came out against, the quote-unquote liberation of Kuwait. Kirkpatrick said, what does it matter who pumps the gas? And Kissinger was the first out of the box to attack what he called the new isolationists. Saddam, and he was one of the first people to equate Saddam Hussein with Hitler back in 1990, and Kirkpatrick backpedaled. And within a few weeks, she was supporting the build-up and invasion. So Kissinger has always, and he supported the 2002, or he was an early supporter, not just of going into Iraq, but if you read his op-ed in August 2002, he wanted to go into Yemen and Somalia as well. So in terms of the militarization of the Middle East, he's been a constant, force accelerator.
Hey, by the way, I know, I think he's not a signatory to all the Project for a New American Century documents calling for regime change against Iraq in the 1990s. I assume he was obviously on board with the status quo of the permanent blockade and sanctions and all that.
No,
was there ever any real quarrel there between him and the neocons, or he was
there
on
were
board?
real quarrels. I think they had real political differences over Israel, but I think that focusing on Israel misses the way Kissinger. One of the arguments of the book is that misrecognizing Kissinger as a realist opposed to the neocons misrecognizes a fundamental aspect of U.S. militarism. Kissinger was a high subjectivist, an idealist. You can go back and read his stuff. He believes that reality doesn't exist. That the only meaning we could draw from reality is the meaning that we give it through our actions. So there's a lot of similarity between the neocons' will to power and Kissinger. There were political differences. There were political differences about the Soviet Union and Israel, which manifest themselves in rivalries. Kissinger wasn't part of the New American Century, but throughout the 1990s, he was constantly riding the Clinton administration to bomb some more in Iraq. He would say it's not about weapons of mass destruction. It's about being able to break the back of somebody we've said we will not negotiate with, and we have to be able to match our military power with our objectives, or we will look like we are weak and impotent. And so when 9/11 came, he was ready to go, and there was a convergence of him and the neocons.
Yeah. It's funny because it was actually just in the news, I think 1 week before the September 11th attacks, that this guy's under investigation for war crimes. And it was even, it's kind of scandalous. His reputation was getting bad enough even in mainstream media where these kind of things could be talked about. And if I remember right, it was a criminal investigation in Chile or something. I don't know exactly what. Somewhere in Latin America or something. And then 1 week later, oh, Henry Kissinger, you're an expert on terrorism. Yeah, he sure as hell is. Go ahead and tell us what to do, Henry.
Yeah, that's the thing about, even if we want to grant Kissinger the achievement that his defenders want to, détente, Kissinger takes actions in the Middle East and Southern Africa that undermine the possibility of détente maturing. He basically helps create a world in the third world that makes the neocon vision of permanent militarism seem like a reasonable response. So even if we want to say that, he believed in interdependence and he was willing to negotiate but he creates the conditions where that kind of diplomacy is no longer possible. And by the time you get, the arms build up and the push into, so that's Kissinger.
All right, everybody, that is the great Greg Grandin. The book is Kissinger's Shadow, The Long Reach of America's Most Controversial Statesman. Brand new out. Find it at Amazon or your local bookshop, etc. And read him at TomDispatch.com. Henry of Arabia. Really great article there. And, of course, it's also under Tom Englehart's name at antiwar.com. Thanks again, Greg. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Scott. Always great to be on.
Hey, all, Scott Horton here. It's always safe to say that one should keep at least some of your savings in precious metals as a hedge against inflation. And if this economy ever does heat back up and the banks start expanding credit, rising prices could make metals a very profitable bet. Since 1977, Robertson Roberts Brokerage Inc. has been helping people buy and sell gold, silver, platinum, and palladium, and they do it well. They're fast, reliable, and trusted for more than 35 years. And they take Bitcoin. Call Robertson Roberts at 1-800-874-9760 or stop by rrbi.co. Hey, all, Scott here for Samurai Tech Academy at MasterSamuraiTech.com. Modern appliance repair requires true technicians who can troubleshoot their high-tech electronics. If you're young and looking to make some real money, or you've been at it a while and just need to keep your skills up to date, Samurai Tech Academy teaches it all. And they'll also show you the business, how to own and run your own. Take a free sample course to see how easily you can learn appliance repair from MasterSamuraiTech.com. Use coupon code Scott Horton for 10% off any course or set of courses at MasterSamuraiTech.com. You hate government, one of them libertarian types, or maybe you just can't stand the president, gun grabbers, or warmongers. Me too. That's why I invented LibertyStickers.com. Well, Rick owns it now, and I didn't make up all of them, but still, if you're driving around and want to tell everyone else how wrong their politics are, there's only one place to go. LibertyStickers.com has got your bumper covered. Left, right, libertarian, empire, police, state, founders quotes, central banking. Yes, bumper stickers about central banking. Lots of them. And, well, everything that matters. LibertyStickers.com. Everyone else's stickers suck.